I want you to think about one of your siblings, or if you don't have any siblings, just think about a friend. Now I want you to imagine that there was a rumor involving the person that you're imagining.
Monkey.
This rumor isn't something small like, oh, she has a big nose or his teeth are yellow.
Wow.
But the rumor is actually that they're a suspected child trafficker. Now, you know that these accusations are false, but not everybody knows that, and suddenly a video surfaces that your sibling or friend is now dead because an angry mob viciously attacked them. Unfortunately, for some people, this wasn't their imagination. This was their reality. I will be giving you informational training that warns social media users about the dangers of misinformation. Many of us, including myself, use some sort of social media every day. This could be in the form of YouTube, Instagram, or TikTok. And it's important that we're all media literate enough to be able to catch when we're being given misinformation. I will speak about the dangers of misinformation, the effects of misinformation, and give you ways to avoid being misinformed. The word misinformation is described differently by many people, but all generally have, around the same meaning. Google defined misinformation as false or inaccurate information, especially that which is deliberately intended to deceive. The American Psychology Association defined it as misinformation is false or inaccurate information, meaning getting the facts wrong. And the CSI Library described the difference between misinformation and disinformation by saying misinformation is a sharing of inaccurate and misleading information in an unintentional way, while disinformation is a deliberate dissemination of false or inaccurate information in order to discredit a person or organization. There is a story that happened regarding two men. The first man was named Nilotopal Das, and the second man was named Abjit Nath. And there was information floating around social media about child traffickers. But what these two men didn't know was that they were the suspected traffickers. The two men were sitting by a stream when they were confronted by a villager, causing an altercation between them. Then they left in a hurry, but while they were running off, the villager warned the next village that these two traffickers were on their way, and he made a phone call and said that the child kidnappers were on their way and they needed to be stopped. This was said by Gashan de la Gupu. These names are confusing, but he was the deputy division chief in the Karabi Anglong. Once the young men arrived at the next village, the villagers, convinced that they found the child traffickers, viciously beat the brothers and killed them all while recording it on their cell phones. They used various tools such as machetes, bamboo sticks, even rocks. As brutal as it sounds, it is unfortunately not a one-case scenario. It's actually been over 20 lynchings reported in India alone that have led to people's death through misinformation on social media. These people can never get their lives back. Misinformation is extremely dangerous and can potentially cost people their lives for it. Many would call this issue a transgression. In the book, Media Literacy in Action, the word transgression is defined as the state of going too far beyond social norms and conventions. And the most unfortunate thing about misinformation is that when people do it, they rarely dig deep to make sure that they have all the facts. Many times, all it takes is one picture or video of someone accusing someone else of a crime, and people will just run with that. But when it gets so serious that lives are lost by it, it is definitely a transgression, especially when the situation is in proximity or is extremely recent. It can feel like it's happening right outside your door. This is in page 87. But not only do regular people sometimes put out false information to try to drift your emotions, but advertisements do as well. According to Renee Hobbs, the writer of Media Literacy in Action, written in 2021, she stated in her book that the only times the government will restrict advertisement is when the advertisement is misleading, the government interest in regulation is substantial, regulation directly advances that interest, or the regulation is not more extensive than necessary. Another example of misinformation leading to people's death is the case of two brothers, Ricardo Flores and Alberto Flores. Similar to the human trafficker incident mentioned earlier, these two were accused of abducting children and removing some of their organs, then leaving their dead bodies to rot on the streets. News spread fast about it, and unfortunately, these two men got the short end of the stick. Although these two men weren't necessarily innocent, police argued that they were only responsible for minor crimes unrelated to the incident. But the people wanted them dead because they were convinced in their minds that these men were behind murdering multiple children. So while they were behind bars for only a few hours, as soon as they were released, they were greeted by an angry mom with murder intent on their minds. They took the men, viciously beat them, and proceeded to burn them both alive. All of this happened over misinformation across a social media platform. These examples are pretty extreme, but let's look at how misinformation can affect us as social media viewers. We receive so much information every day, it's hard to differentiate what's true and what's false. But what happens when we do fall into misinformation? We will find that it can change your whole opinion on a person, place, or an event. Have you ever thought about voting for someone, but you see nothing but negativity about this person all over social media? Whether the information is true about the person or not, it undoubtedly swayed your mindset over the person if you haven't done your own research on them. This happened a lot for Donald Trump. I myself don't know too much about him, but while he was president, all I saw over Instagram was how terrible of a person and a president that he was. They called him a racist and a narcissistic white supremacist. I didn't know any information myself, so I just gave in to those accusations. What I later found was that he wasn't all that horrible of a person after all, and many of these posts were designed to exaggerate certain sides and perspectives. What are the steps that we can take so that we don't fall victim to as much information? I say as much because truthfully, we're probably not going to do deep research on every single topic. We can drastically reduce the amount of it that we fall victim to. One thing you could do is examine the source that's putting out the information. If you find that they are an unreliable source, or if they have a history of sending out misinformation, it is safe that you do not use them as a final say when it comes to making a decision on what information you decide to trust. Another way to protect yourself from misinformation is to read past the headline. Read past the headline. Read past the headline. Many people will just read the headlines or captions and make an assumption automatically. It's important to look fully into the picture or video that they're looking at to make a fair judgment. And lastly, don't be biased. Look into things with an open mind and a fair thought process without picking sides. Today, we talked about the importance of understanding misinformation and how it can affect you and the lives around you. I hope that I was able to give you a better understanding and that I was able to broaden your mind about the dangers of misinformation and how it can lead to something as serious as someone losing their entire life over it, or multiple people losing their entire lives over it. And I hope that you are able to get a better insight on what you should do on how not to be misinformed and how you should dig a little deeper into things before you just believe what was told to you in the first place.